Okay, let's take you back to this item now. The SA Harvest is calling for government to focus on the right to affordable, nutritious food, with tons of food being wasted each month. For more on this, we're joined by the organization's founder and CEO, Browde. Alan, second time lucky. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. You were still telling us about the observation the organization has made when it comes to the issue of food wastage in the country.
Yeah, well, I was talking about the waste, 10 million tons a year of food. That's 30 billion meals, and 20 million people on the spectrum of food vulnerability, serious food vulnerability, from millions of people, including our children, who go to sleep hungry every night, to those who run out of enough money to buy food for their families. Now, our Constitution, and we're talking about human rights today, our Constitution is very clear. Section 27 and 28 clearly state that it is every South African's basic human right to get enough food and water. And in this case, the government is just not delivering on their responsibility in terms of the Constitution.
You have another solution, and you believe the focus must be on helping people become food sovereign and independent. How?
So, you know, that's the great question. From our perspective, our company is really divided into two legs in terms of our strategy. To start off with, our mission is to end hunger in South Africa. Some people say to me, yeah, but you know, you have a mission like that, how meaningful is it? So the fact is that is very meaningful. We believe that with the right intervention from the government and others, we could end hunger relatively quickly in this country. And on the one side, we do charity work because of these 20 million people who would otherwise, many of whom would die of hunger in our country. The NGO space is very important in terms of preventing that sort of catastrophe. On the other hand, we realize that charity does not end hunger. What will end hunger is systemic, sustainable intervention that helps people, in the old adage, helps people to learn to fish so that there could be entrepreneurial development, people could learn to do their own businesses, people could develop their potential to become employed. And, of course, in terms of the government intervening sustainably, there's so many things that could be done, because the fundamental cause, the first principle of cause in South Africa, is that the access for all the millions of poor people to affordable, nutritious food has become very difficult. We have a broken food chain where the difference between the cost of food at the farm level to the cost of food at retailers, where most of South Africa, 96% of South Africa's food is bought, is massive. You get from the farm, you get the first margin goes to transport, the second margin goes to manufacturing, the third margin to another transport, and finally you get to the retailer adds on their own margin, making food impossible to buy for really the majority of South Africans. So we go to the government and say, look, what you have to do. The first thing is to build direct linkages between producers and communities. The producers must have a relationship with the communities, distributing food direct to these communities and supporting township food economies, which is massive. But instead of doing that, local authorities make it very difficult for people to trade from pavements, trade in taxi ranks. And, you know, it's actually a terrible shame. We are a developing country. One could make that sort of trade a part of the atmosphere of our country. Instead, we harass them and we rely on a food chain that is just not suitable for South Africa.
One would argue even further that it's not even sustainable, because we saw what happened during the protests in July, not this year, not last year, but the year before. And then we take a look at the suggestion that government takes a look at banning food waste. How do you police that? Because you are wanting to model what France did in 2016. How did they get it right?
So, yeah, that's a thing that is terribly important. With 10 million tons of food going to waste, and a lot of it from retailers and even more from the manufacturing and agricultural sectors. But what they did in France, and I'll give you a quick example, they've got one of the biggest retail food chains in the world is Carrefour. And they did a research program where they measured all the United Kingdom big retailers with Carrefour. And they found that the saving of food that would have gone to waste was sort of equal between all these retailers. Then the French government in 2016 banned food waste. They made it illegal and punishable by huge fines. And in the next year, they saved more waste, the food that would have gone to waste, than all the other retailers combined. It showed immediately the efficacy of making food waste illegal. Now, you asked the question, how this can be policed. You know, we're talking about, these are massive, normally, public companies, and they will police themselves, because if they don't do what the law says they're going to do, they're in trouble. And the fact of the matter is, these retailers are very accustomed to abiding by the law. You know, they're in the food industry. And so safety and cleanliness and hygiene and abiding by all the laws of South Africa are part and parcel of what they do, and they would do that too, and it would make a massive difference.
What difference can you and I also make, Alan?
So, yeah, everybody asks that question, Dudu, and it's a very fair question. So I always say this. Firstly, one can get involved in organizations like SA Harvest and many others. We have volunteering programs, and people can do things in terms of getting food to people in the townships, and start doing things that are innovative, and start doing things even in the smallest way. And I say this, and you know, it was one of the inspirations of our company was Madiba, who always said, you know, if you're going to change the world, you start off with one small step. And that one small step could be every individual rescuing the food that they can, helping to get it to these communities via organizations like ourselves or directly, and certainly helping in programs that are going to promote the sustainability. You know, if someone's involved in education or someone's a business person, to teach and help train people who've never been helped to be entrepreneurial, to help train them, as we are doing, by the way, to become entrepreneurial, to lessen their reliance on charity in one small step at a time. Altogether, we can really make a massive difference in end hunger in South Africa.
Alan Browde is the CEO of SA Harvest. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.